Hi everyone, I'm Claire from Susan's family. Today, I'll teach you how to knit the Breezy hooded cardigan. For this electronic tutorial, you can check it out by searching for sosoje.com on the website. This sweater consists of the body, chest piece, and sleeves, hat, front band, and buttons. First, knit the body back and forth. Then, separately knit each part of the chest piece. After completion, connect the shoulders. Then pick up stitches to knit the hat. Next, make the front band and sew on the buttons. Finally, knit and attach the sleeves. First, let's learn how to knit the body. Knit from the bottom upwards in 5 sections. Section 1 of the body uses the Italian cast-on method. Knit back and forth in a 2x2 ribbing pattern. After completing it, use the I-cord with 4 stitches for edging to bind off. Let's take a look at the chart. 1 square represents 1 stitch. The cast-on method and stitch count are marked below the chart. The fabric piece is knitted back and forth. For the right side chart, read from right to left. Row numbers are indicated on the right side of the chart. For the wrong side chart, read from left to right. Row numbers are indicated on the left side of the chart. A variety of stitch techniques are used. All of them are marked on the diagram. I won't go through each one as an example. Pay attention to what is demonstrated in the chart. It shows the conditions of the fabric's right side. On the wrong side, you need to knit the opposite stitches shown in the chart. Please watch the demonstration. Start with a cast-on. Begin by leaving a corresponding length of yarn. Refer specifically to the chart for details. Hold 2 strands of yarn with your left hand. Then, use your right thumb and index finger. Insert them between these 2 strands of yarn. The strand connected to the yarn ball rests on your index finger. The reserved long tail rests on your thumb. Straighten the yarn tightly. Pick up one end of the circular needle with your left hand. Insert it from above into the right side of the yarn. Counterclockwise, pick up a loop. We will count this stitch as 1 knit stitch. Next, start the second purl stitch. First, use your index finger to carry the yarn. Wrap the yarn from the front of the needle. Then use your thumb to carry the yarn. Wrap it behind the needle. Afterwards, bring the yarn carried by your index finger down from the front. You can see the loop on the needle. There is a strand of yarn lying across the top in the front. 1 purl stitch is now cast on. Continue with the 3rd knit stitch. First, use your thumb to carry the yarn and wrap it behind the needle. Then, use your index finger to carry the yarn and wrap it from the front of the needle. Next, bring the yarn carried by your thumb down from the back. 1 knit stitch is now cast on. Continue with the 4th purl stitch. Use your index finger to carry the yarn. Use your thumb to carry the yarn. Bring the yarn from your index finger down. The purl stitch casting on is complete. Start the 5th stitch as a knit stitch. Use your thumb to carry the yarn. Use your index finger to carry the yarn. Bring the yarn from your thumb down. Follow this process for the rest of the stitches. Continue alternating between purl and knit stitches. Refer to the chart for the exact number of stitches. The stitch count for the sample swatch is not to be used as reference. After casting on the required number of stitches, tie the 2 yarn tails in a knot to secure them slightly. If the reserved yarn tail is too long, adjust it accordingly. You can leave about 15 centimeters and then cut off. That concludes the explanation for the first row of casting on. Now, let's move on to the second row of casting on. Start by slipping the stitch purlwise without working it. Then, wrap the yarn below the needle. You will knit the next stitch as a regular knit stitch. Here, insert the hook behind the single strand of yarn and proceed with the stitch. Repeat the technique used for the first 2 stitches. I'll demonstrate this again for clarity. For the knit stitches in this row and onward, always insert the hook behind the strand to continue knitting. Follow this process and complete the entire row. Once you finish the last stitch, that concludes the explanation for the second row of casting on. Now, let's continue with the third row of casting on. The technique for this row is identical to the previous one. Starting from this row, all subsequent knit stitches will be worked in the regular way. Continue with this method and complete the entire row. Once it's done, you finished the third row. That concludes the explanation for casting on. After completing the cast on, start working on the first row. This row is worked on the right side. Read the chart from right to left. Begin knitting the 2 by 2 ribbing pattern. Place the working yarn on the right hand side. The chart starts with 3 knit stitches. First, work 2 knit stitches. The third stitch has a purl texture. Here, you need to swap the loops of the last 2 stitches. Insert the right needle into the second loop from the front. Then release the loop from the left needle. Reinsert it back into the right loop from behind. Transfer the loop on the right needle back onto the left needle. Now the positions of these 2 loops are swapped. At this point, the knit stitch is in front, and the purl stitch is at the back. Work 1 knit stitch next. Then continue with 2 purl stitches. After that, work 2 knit stitches. The texture of the second knit stitch doesn't match. Swap the 2 loops on the left side first. Then work 1 knit stitch and 2 purl stitches. Let's take a look at the pattern for this round. Except for the 3 stitches at the beginning and ending, it consists entirely of 2 knit stitches alternating with 2 purl stitches. This stitch technique is called 2x2 ribbing because we need to match the texture of the starting chain. You need to switch the position every 4 stitches. That means after working 1 knit stitch, swap the loop positions. Then work 1 knit stitch and 2 purl stitches. Continue with this method as you go along. For the last 3 loops, work all of them as knit stitches. After completing, place a marker on the braid below the needle for reference. This makes it easier to count rows later on. This side with the marker is the front. This will be the right side of the entire piece. The first row is now complete. Next, work the second row. We will work this row on the wrong side. Read the chart from left to right. Turn your work. Here, you need to work the opposite stitch pattern on the wrong side. The first 3 stitches are knit symbols. Work the opposite stitch here. Work 3 purl stitches. Then work 2 knit stitches. You can also follow the texture to work your stitches. Purl texture corresponds to working purl stitches. Knit texture corresponds to working knit stitches. Finish this row. The second row is now complete. Continue following the chart to work the 2x2 ribbing. Here, I'll show you how to count the rows. Place the right side of the piece facing up. Start counting from the chain above the stitch marker. 1 chain represents 1 row. The loops on the needle also count as 1 row. There are 4 rows worked in this swatch. This is how you count the rows. Before the last row of section 1, you can follow the texture. Work the 2x2 ribbing pattern back and forth. All the stitch techniques you need have been demonstrated before. Refer to the previous demonstrations. Follow the chart to work the corresponding number of rows. I'll demonstrate with this swatch. The method for the last row, we will work this row on the wrong side. Work all stitches as purl. Once you finish this row, complete the M1BL. Place your right index finger above the yarn. Wrap it clockwise in a circle. Slip this loop onto the needle. Slightly tighten it. This is the M1BL. Now we've added 1 stitch. Work 3 more M1BL. That completes the last row. Next, use the L-cord 4-stitch bordure method to bind off. Begin binding off. First, work 3 knit stitches. Then work 1 double knit stitch together. Insert the right needle into the first 2 loops on the left needle. Take the yarn from behind the last loop. Yarn over and draw through. This completes the double knit stitch. This decreases 1 stitch. Transfer the 4 loops on the right needle. Bring them back to the left needle one by one. Then work 3 knit stitches. Note: when working the first stitch, slightly tighten it. After completing this step, work 1 double knit stitch together. Pay attention to inserting the needle from the back of the picked up loop. This decreases another stitch. Repeat this method for the following steps. Move the 4 stitches from the right needle back to the left needle. Start by knitting 3 knit stitches. Then decrease 1 stitch. This is the method for the L-cord edge finishing technique. No matter how many stitches you cast on, the process for binding off remains the same. First, transfer the initial loops back onto the left needle. Then knit the knit stitches. Continue until there is only 1 stitch left. Take this stitch and bind it off together with the loop on the needle. Follow this method for the rest of the process. Bind off all remaining loops. Stop when you have 1 stitch left before the end. Now we've reached this point, which is when 5 loops remain. You need to bind off all the loops using a slip stitch. Start by knitting 2 knit stitches. After completing them, pick up the previous stitch with the left needle, cover the next stitch behind it, and slip it off the right needle. This way, you've bound off 1 stitch. Continue knitting the knit stitches while binding off. For the last 2 loops, work a decrease stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. Now there is only 1 loop remaining. Simply stretch the loop to finish. Leave a long yarn tail and cut the yarn. Pass the yarn tail through this loop. Pull tight. This completes the bind off. This finishes section 1 of the body. Next, we will work on section 2 of the body. Start by picking up stitches for row 1. Take the main color yarn. Make a slip knot. Place the right side of the piece facing you. The bind-off edge should be facing upwards. You can locate the bind-off edge here. There are 4 rows of horizontal chains. Find the 3rd row of braids counting from the bottom. Insert the right needle into the middle of the first braid on the right side. Pick up these 2 strands. This is the back loop of the 3rd row of braids. And the front loop of the last row of braids. Pull the slip knot through. Adjust the loop size slightly. Then pick up 1 stitch from the adjacent braid on the left. Continue picking up stitches, 1 stitch to another, going downward. Don't forget to pick up the last braid. After picking up all the stitches, check the stitch count. The number of picked up stitches should match the number of starting chains. That completes the first row. For the second row, work all knit stitches on the wrong side. The method is quite simple. You can finish it on your own. When done, leave a long yarn tail and fasten off. For the third row, you need to switch colors. Take out the contrasting color yarn. Leave about 10 centimeters in length. Tie a knot on the end of the main color yarn. Pull tight. Then move this knot to the base of the main color yarn. Pay attention, the knot for joining the yarn should be on the wrong side of the fabric. Make sure it doesn't show on the right side. For any future situations where you need to join yarn, follow the same method. You can use this method to join the yarn every time. Continue knitting with the contrasting color on the right side. Knit all stitches as purl stitches. Once you finish this row, the third row will be completed. Next, the technique for the remaining part of section 2 is quite simple. You just need to focus on the stitch patterns, switching colors, and the method for binding off. It has been demonstrated before. Everyone, refer to the chart and finish knitting it. Now, take a look. This is what section 2 of the body looks like after completion in the sample swatch. Next, We will knit section 3 of the body. Pick up stitches at the ending position of section 2. Knit the corresponding pattern. The method for picking up stitches and knitting for the first 4 rows has already been demonstrated earlier. For the medium size, knit evenly without increasing or decreasing. For the smaller and larger sizes, you need to knit a decrease stitch on row 3. The SPO stitch technique will be used. The actual position for the decrease is not fixed here. Simply knit the corresponding number of decreases in approximately the right area. Please watch the stitch demonstration. Knit stitch, then SPO, short for SPO. When knitting, use the knit method with the right needle to slip the first stitch on the left side. Then knit 1 stitch. Next, pick up the unknitted stitch with the left needle. Pass it over the stitch on the left and slip it off. The SPO is now complete. You can see that the right loop is positioned above the left loop. Continue following this method. Refer to the chart and complete the first 4 rows. Starting from row 5, knit the corresponding pattern. I'll demonstrate using this sample swatch. First, knit 2 stitches. Then work 1 stitch as a yo stitch. Bring the yarn from front to back over the right needle. This will create an extra loop on the right needle. That's how you complete 1 yarn over stitch. Next, the gray squares on the chart indicate that there are no stitches in those positions. Simply knit S2 SPO on the left side. Move the right needle from left to right and knit the next 2 stitches on the left needle. At the same time, slip without working, then knit 1 stitch. After completing it, use the left needle to pick up the 2 stitches that were skipped before. Pass them over the stitch on the left and slip it off. This completes S2 SPO. This stitch effectively decreases 2 stitches from both sides. Continue with 1 yarn over stitch and S2 SPO. Let's take a look at the fabric piece. Consider this combination of yarn over and decrease as one motif group. Repeat this pattern as you work downward. You will have 1 loop remaining at the end. Knit 1 stitch. This completes the 5th row. Now, move on to the 6th row. Start with 2 purl stitches. Then do 1 yarn over. Here, the loop is already on top of the right needle. Next, knit 1 slip stitch. That is, slip the yarn over loop from the left needle. Pick it up onto the right needle, then knit 1 purl stitch. Here, you need to move the loop back to the top right. Then continue with the purl stitch. Let's take a look. 2 strands appear on the right side of this loop. These are the yarn over and slip stitch loops. This completes 1 group of the pattern. I'll demonstrate another group of the pattern now. Keep the yarn tail above the right needle as you go. Work 1 slip stitch. Yarn over, then knit a purl stitch. This hanging stitch, combined with the slip stitch and purl stitch, is now complete. Another group of the pattern is finished. Continue downward following this method. Repeat the process for this group of the pattern. Finally, work the last loop as a purl stitch. Row 6 is now completed. Next, work on row 7. Start with 2 knit stitches. Then work 1 K2 tog increase. From now on, we'll call this a cluster increase. The right needle picks up these 2 loops on the left side. Work 1 knit stitch. The left needle holds this loop temporarily. Wrap the yarn over the top of the right needle. Continue by picking up these 2 loops and working 1 purl stitch. This cluster increase is now complete. Continue with 1 knit stitch. One pattern group is now complete. I'll demonstrate another pattern group. Start with a cluster increase. The right needle picks up these 2 loops and works 1 knit stitch. Do not release the loop. Yarn over. Then pick up this loop and work 1 purl stitch. This completes the cluster increase. Follow with 1 knit stitch. Another pattern group is now done. Continue following this method. Finish this row. End with 1 knit stitch. Row 7 is complete. On row 8, work all stitches as purl on the wrong side. Everyone finishes this row. Continue with row 9. Start with 1 knit stitch. Then work 1 SPO. Hereafter, we'll call it SPO. With the right needle, slip 1 stitch as if to knit without working it. Then knit 1 stitch. Next, use the left needle to pick up the slipped stitch. Pass it over the knitted stitch. This completes the right side decrease. Continue with 1 yarn over stitch. Then work 1 K3 tog. This completes 1 pattern group. You can see that the decrease stitch is in the same column as the decrease stitch from the previous pattern. Repeat. Continue working the pattern down. Work until there are 3 loops left on the needle. Now we've reached this position. Work 1 K2 tog, which we'll call K2 tog from now on. Insert the right needle from left to right, pass through both loops. Knit 1 stitch. This completes the K2 tog. Next, knit 1 stitch. Row 9 is now complete. For the remaining part of section 3 on the body, Refer to the chart and work the corresponding pattern. After completing it, use the border technique to bind off all stitches. Bind off all loops. For section 4 of the body, pick up stitches from the bind off edge of section 3 and continue working. Switch colors as needed during the knitting process. Once completed, bind off using the same method. The method is identical to that of section 2. All stitch techniques required have been demonstrated before. Please refer to the chart and finish them. For section 5 of the body, continue knitting the corresponding pattern. The picking up stitches and the methods for the first 8 rows have been demonstrated previously. Refer to the chart to knit. Start working the pattern from row 9. The pattern repeat here is the same for small and medium sizes. The starting position for the large size is slightly different. You can watch the video demonstration to learn the method first. Then follow the chart to knit. I will demonstrate using this sample. The stitch pattern on the sample is random. It's only for demonstrating the method. Let's start with row 9. Knit 3 knit stitches first. Then do 1 U-stitch and sew. Next, knit 3 knit stitches. Then do 1 K2 tog. And 1 U-stitch. Treat these stitches as one pattern group. Continue repeating this group of stitches downward. Finish this row. Row 9 is now completed. Move on to row 10. We will work this row on the wrong side. Start with 3 purl stitches. Then do 1 U-stitch. Wrap the yarn from back to front around the right needle once. The U-stitch is done. Next, the chart shows a P2 tog. Work the P2 tog stitch on the wrong side. Use the right needle to pick up 2 stitches from the left side simultaneously. Purl 1 stitch. The P2 tog is now complete. You can check the right side of the fabric. It should show the texture of a knit K2 tog. This matches the pattern chart. Next, work 1 purl stitch. The next stitch on the chart is a sew. Work the sew as a purl stitch. First, switch the position of the first 2 loops on the left needle. Move these 2 stitches to the right needle. Pick up the loop from the right side, using the left needle from the front. Release the loop on the right needle. Slip the loop back onto the left needle from the left side. The 2 loops have been moved successfully. Insert the right needle into these 2 loops. Work 1 purl stitch. The sew is now complete. Take a look at the wrong side of the fabric. You can see the texture of the sew. Next, work 1 U-stitch. Then work 5 purl stitches. This completes one group of the pattern. Continue repeating this group of the pattern as you move down. Finish this row. Row 10 is now complete. Continue with row 11. Start by working 5 knit stitches. After completing those, work 1 yo stitch, then work 1 sk2 togpo. Begin by knitting the first stitch in the usual way, slip the next stitch on the left side without working it. Next, work 1 k2 tog. Use the left needle to pick up the slipped stitch. Pass it over the stitch on the left and slip it off. The sk2 togpo is now complete. Continue with 1 slipped stitch and 7 knit stitches. One pattern group is now finished. Repeat this pattern group as you move downward. Finish the entire row. Row 11 is now complete. Continue with the remaining part of the 5th section of the body. Work the identical stitch pattern on the right side as shown in the chart. All required stitch techniques have been demonstrated before. Please refer to the previous demonstrations for guidance. Refer to the chart and complete them. Up to this point, the method for weaving the body has been fully explained. Next, we will weave the chest pieces. It is divided into 3 areas: the right front, the back, and the left front. Start with the right front piece. Then join the yarn at the corresponding positions respectively. Weave the back piece and the left front piece. For each area, start by decreasing stitches under the arm to form the armpit. Then, for the front piece, work even on the side of the sleeve cap. Decrease stitches on the side of the front band to form a V-neck. Work yarn over short rows at the top to create the sloping shoulder, after decreasing stitches for the armpit on the back piece. Continue working even. Then decrease stitches at the neckline to form the back neck opening. Similarly, work yarn over short rows at the top to shape the sloping shoulder. Finally, connect the corresponding positions of the front and back pieces at the shoulders, using the method of binding off together. Let me explain with a sample how to decrease stitches under the arm. Work yarn over short rows for the shoulder, and decrease stitches at the neckline. I will also cover the method of binding off together for the shoulder. You can first watch the video to learn these techniques. Then refer to the chart to knit the corresponding parts. I'll demonstrate the methods using this small swatch. At the beginning of row 1, bind off several stitches in a row. The exact number of stitches is based on the chart instructions. There are as many bind off symbols as the number of stitches you need to bind off. This means you should bind off that exact number of stitches. In my case, I need to bind off 4 stitches in a row. If there are a lot of consecutive stitches to bind off, you can use a stitch marker to separate them beforehand. Now let's start binding off the stitches. The first stitch can be a slip stitch, or it can be a knit stitch. Here, I'm going to do a slip stitch. Then I'll work 1 knit stitch. Then, pass the first stitch over the second stitch. That's how you bind off 1 stitch. Unless otherwise specified, on the right side, you should bind off stitches using knit stitches. Continue with one more knit stitch. Bind off one stitch. Keep knitting and binding off stitches at the same time. Keep going until there is only one loop left on the right side of the marker. Here, I have 2 loops remaining, so I need to bind off one more stitch. Now there is only one loop left on the right side of the stitch marker. This is the 4th stitch's loop. We need to bind off this stitch as well. Therefore, we need to knit one more stitch and bind it off. This next stitch will be the final bind off symbol. The adjacent stitch should be knitted directly with a knit stitch here. Pay attention, since the stitch techniques may vary depending on the pattern. This stitch needs to be knitted by referring to the chart. After finishing, bind off the 4th stitch as well. This way, all 4 stitches in the chart will have been bound off. Continue knitting while following the chart. Pay attention. The next step should start from the 2nd stitch next to the bind off symbol. Begin knitting from there. Before knitting, slightly tighten this loop to prevent any noticeable holes. There's no special pattern here, so we will knit all stitches as knit stitches. Finish knitting this row. Now we've completed the first row. Continue with the second row. We will work this row on the wrong side. Bind off the first 4 stitches at the beginning. Separate first with a stitch marker. Start binding off. Similarly, the first stitch can be a slip stitch, or you can do a purl stitch. Here, I'll do a slip stitch. Then knit 1 purl stitch. Next, pass the previous stitch over the following stitch. This way, 1 stitch is bound off. Continue with another purl stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. When there are no special instructions on the wrong side, you will purl and bind off at the same time. Continue to purl and bind off simultaneously. Keep going until there is only 1 stitch left to the right of the marker. Here, let's bind off 1 more stitch. Now there is only 1 stitch remaining to the right of the marker. This means there is only the 4th stitch's loop left. Bind off this last stitch as well. So you need to knit 1 more stitch and then bind it off. The next stitch, which is also the stitch adjacent to the last bind off symbol. On the wrong side, we will purl this stitch. Bind off the 4th stitch. In actual knitting, The specific stitch technique for this stitch should be followed according to the chart. This way, the 4 stitches from the pattern chart are now bound off. Continue knitting by referring to the diagram. Pay attention, the next step should start knitting from the second stitch next to the bind off symbol. Before knitting, slightly tighten this loop. To prevent noticeable holes. There's no special pattern here, so we will knit all stitches as purl stitches. Now, the second row is explained. Next, we'll work on binding off on the right side. The method is the same as for the first row here. Bind off on the wrong side. The method is the same as for the second row here. I'll demonstrate 2 more rows. Continue with the third row. At the beginning of this row, bind off 2 stitches. First, bind off 1 stitch. On the right side, knit and bind off. Then knit 1 stitch and bind it off. Pay attention when binding off the last stitch. For this stitch you're working, the stitch technique should follow the chart. Sometimes the pattern is special, so this may not necessarily be a knit stitch. Everyone, please don't make a mistake here. It's the same for the wrong side. Now I've bound off 2 stitches. Continue to finish this row. After completing it, continue with the 4th row. At the beginning of this row, bind off 2 stitches as well. First, bind off 1 stitch. On the wrong side, bind off using a purl stitch. Then work 1 more purl stitch and bind it off. This way, you've bound off 2 stitches. Continue to finish the rest of the row. Now I've completed the 4th row. If you only need to bind off 1 stitch on each side, the method is the same as the one used for binding off the first stitch earlier. This is the method for binding off underarm stitches. It's a yarn over short row technique with held stitches. For example, on the first row, I will turn back 5 stitches on this side. Proceed with normal knitting at the beginning. When there are 5 stitches remaining, stop knitting. I've now finished the first row. Turn your work. Continue with the second row. Start the second row with a double stitch. No matter what stitch technique this is, you need to place the yarn above the right needle. Slip the first stitch. Then tighten the yarn. If the next stitch is a purl stitch, you should wrap the yarn around the needle, bring it to the top and then knit. If the next stitch is a knit stitch, just knit it directly. Here, I'm doing a purl stitch on the wrong side. You can see that in the second row, there are 5 stitches short on this side. That means you stop knitting when there are 5 stitches left at the end. After completing it, turn your work. Continue with the third row. Start with a double stitch slip knot, which means slipping the first stitch as if to purl. Tighten the yarn. If the next stitch is a purl stitch, you need to wrap the yarn again. Wrap it to the top and continue knitting. If the next stitch is a knit stitch, just knit it directly. Here, I'm doing a knit stitch. Sometimes, the number of stitches for each yarn over short row is the same. Sometimes, it varies due to patterns or other reasons. The number of yarn over short rows can differ. You'll need to follow the chart instructions specifically when knitting. You can see that, at the end of row 3, you need to do a yarn over short row of 3 stitches. Note: the double stitch with a knot counts as 1 stitch. That means these 3 stitches should be skipped without knitting. Now, row 3 is completed. For row 4, you also need to do a yarn over short row of 3 stitches at the end. Similarly, the double stitch with a knot is counted as 1 stitch. After each yarn over short row, the first stitch at the beginning should be done as a double stitch with a knot. Now, row 4 is completed. Sometimes, while doing yarn over short rows, you also need to shape the neckline in the middle. You can refer to the chart for actual knitting. I will continue to finish all the rows that require yarn over short rows in this chart. Now, I have completed it. After completing the yarn over short rows, the third to last row of the chart is now completed. Next, you need to decrease rows. That would be row 9 here. Start by decreasing on this side. I will knit all stitches as knits here. When you encounter a double stitch, treat it as 1 stitch and knit it. This side of the row has been decreased. The last row involves decreasing on this side. On the wrong side, I will purl all stitches. When you encounter a double stitch, treat it as one stitch and purl it. This is what we call yarn over short row shaping with held stitches. Let's learn a commonly used method for decreasing at the collar. It involves decreasing using knit stitches. This creates the desired curve. Let's assume this is the front neckline. Therefore, this side is the left shoulder. Sometimes, the shoulders require yarn over short rows. There are no yarn over short rows here. I will only explain the neckline decrease. Let's start with the left shoulder. This chart has a smaller stitch count. The focus is on explaining the technique. First, knit the first row of the neckline. Here, that means knitting 13 knit stitches. If the stitch count is higher, you can use a stitch marker to separate the stitches before continuing. I've already finished the first row. The remaining loops are on hold for now. Next, we'll work the second row. This row is worked on the wrong side. You'll notice that this row starts with binding off 3 stitches in a row. If there are more consecutive bound off stitches, we can separate them with a stitch marker first. Let's start binding off. Begin with a slip stitch. Then work 1 purl stitch. Next, pass the first stitch over the second stitch. That's how you bind off 1 stitch. Continue with another purl stitch. Then bind off another stitch. Unless otherwise specified, on the wrong side, you'll be working purl stitches while binding off. There is 1 stitch remaining to the right of the marker. That is, the loop of the third stitch. We need to bind this stitch off. Therefore, you should work 1 more stitch and then bind it off. The following stitch is the one adjacent to the last bind off symbol. Here, we simply work a purl stitch. Note, since stitch techniques may vary depending on the pattern, you should refer to the chart for this stitch. After you finish working the stitches, bind off the third stitch. This way, the 3 stitches shown in the chart will be bound off. Continue following the diagram for the rest of the work. Pay attention, the next step should start from the second stitch next to the bind off symbol. Begin stitching there. Before starting, gently tighten this loop slightly to prevent any noticeable holes. There's no special pattern here, so we will work all stitches as purl stitches. Now, the second row is complete. Let's move on to the third row, refer to the chart, and work all stitches as knit stitches. I've already completed it, so let's continue with the fourth row. Just decrease 2 stitches at the beginning here. The method is identical to the first row. Start with 1 slip stitch. Then work 1 purl stitch. Decrease 1 stitch. Continue with another purl stitch. Decrease 1 more stitch. Slightly tighten the loops. Then continue working all stitches as purl stitches, and finish the 5th row as well. Now, I have completed the 5th row. Continue to work on the 6th row. At the beginning of this row, just decrease 1 stitch. The method is the same as decreasing the first stitch in the first row. After completing that, work all stitches as purl stitches. For the remaining 7th and 9th rows, work all stitches as knit stitches. The 8th row is identical to the 6th row. Start by decreasing 1 stitch at the beginning. There's no need to decrease in the 10th row, just continue with regular purl stitches. Now, I've finished these 10 rows. In the end, there should be 6 stitches remaining. This is marked as suspended stitching, which means you need to temporarily secure these loops. You can use a 0-line placeholder yarn to secure them temporarily. If there are no special requirements for the yarn tail, leave about 15 centimeters and cut the yarn. Pay attention to prevent the loops from slipping off. The left shoulder is now complete. Next, we'll work on the right shoulder. Before starting, we need to decrease 9 stitches in the middle first. You can use a stitch marker to separate them. Pick up the new yarn. Make a slip knit and slightly tighten the small loop. Start with 2 knit stitches. Then bind off 1 stitch. Knit 1 more stitch. Bind off 1 stitch again. If there's no special instruction, on the right side, you'll be binding off while knitting the stitches. Continue to bind off the remaining stitches. Remember, when binding off the last loop, make sure to knit this final stitch carefully. This means the first stitch on the left side of the bind off symbol. You need to refer to the pattern, and work the corresponding stitch technique. Here, we'll continue with knit stitches, and at the same time, bind off the stitch. Once it's completed, start from the second stitch and finish the rest of the row. Next, on the wrong side, work the entire second row in purl stitches. Now I've already finished the second row. Continue with the third row. Start by binding off 3 stitches in a row. You can begin with 1 slip stitch and 1 knit stitch. Then bind off 1 stitch. Continue knitting and binding off the stitches. Now, the 3 stitches are bound off. Continue to finish the third row, and complete the fourth row as well. Now I've already finished the fourth row. At the beginning of the fifth row, you need to bind off 2 stitches. The bind off method is the same as the first 2 stitches of the third row. For the upcoming 7th and 9th rows, you will also start by binding off 1 stitch. The bind off method is the same as the first stitch of the third row. I will continue to finish the remaining part of the right shoulder. Now I have already finished knitting the right shoulder. There should be 6 stitches left here. Temporarily secure these 6 stitches. This way, the method for decreasing stitches at the neckline is now complete. The first method is connecting stitch to stitch. This method is commonly used when both pieces are in the loop state. It's a frequently used joining technique. It involves combining and binding off stitches to join the fabric pieces together. It's typically used for joining the shoulder parts of front and back pieces. Both fabric pieces are in the loop state. We will consider the even stitch side as the right side. The bind off usually takes place on the wrong side of the fabric. This means you need to place the 2 pieces with their right sides facing each other. So, the 2 pieces to be joined should have their right sides together. Usually, one of the pieces has yarn that is not cut. No matter which piece the yarn is on, place the side with the uncut yarn on the right. When doing the combined bind off, you typically knit and bind off stitches at the same time. This means passing through loops from both fabric pieces simultaneously. Perform a knit stitch and then slip stitch bind off. Simply knit and bind off in a corresponding manner. If one piece has more stitches than the other, you'll need to decrease while binding off on the side with more stitches. If this piece has more stitches, you can insert your hook through 2 loops. Then continue by inserting through 1 loop. Knit the stitch and bind off. If the other piece has more stitches, insert your hook through 2 loops from that piece. Knit the stitch and bind off. In my case, both pieces have the same number of stitches, so I'll continue binding them off together. Afterward, tie off the yarn tail and hide it. This is what the merged binding off looks like. Up to this point, the method for knitting the front panel has been fully explained.